it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated counting mumbo jumbo, using a simple system. Let's face it, your accountant's busy documenting your transactions and creating a rear-view mirror of what happened. And my guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We're not taught money in school, and accountants are not taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equal expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue doesn't equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Today, we have on another Profit First professional, Denise Grove. She's going to share her journey as an accountant, along with insights that you can make actionable in your business this week. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Denise Grove. It's great to have you joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Can you share with the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. I am a financial coach, and I love to say that I have the heart of a teacher, because my goal is to help educate and improve my clients, and as well as just the community's understanding of money and their money choices. I have a unique background in that I not only worked with the Big Four international accounting firms out of my college experience, which I am a degreed accountant. I also worked with Fortune 500 as well as small startup companies. So I can identify with the large companies as well as working with privately held or closely held companies, helping the owners understand the choices they're making with the money, as it also help with their personal side if they have questions there.
And I know we both spent some time with Dave Ramsey and going through his coaching program, and I think that's one of his key lines is having the heart of a teacher, is helping people to understand what's going on in their personal and business finances and helping them to make better money decisions and teaching them why and doing it in a way that they get it. Because too often I think accountants talk in words that our clients don't understand, and that's not helpful. We have to make them feel comfortable with money and how they're making their decisions and the why behind it.
Exactly. I could not have summed that up better. And of course, one of my observations, Rocky, and I think I mentioned with you, I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs too. A lot of them are just feel they don't have good knowledge in the money area and they're a little intimidated by it. So I have a very empathetic style of sharing information. And in doing so, I help make them comfortable because I want them to own their money. And basically, picking up off of a Dave Ramsey personality, Chris Hogan, who taught my personal coaching class, one of his phrases is tell your money where to go. And that's exactly what I want my clients to be doing.
And that's right. And we have the power to tell our money where to go. And that's exactly what Profit First, at the end of the day, is telling our money where to go and putting it there. It's the reason I've had financial success, and it works.
It does work. And The envelope system, again, is on the personal finance side. People have heard of that, how you use an envelope and designate a certain amount of money to pay the rent or pay the mortgage and pay the utilities and for the grocery bill. And of course, there's apps now that will help you do that on the personal side. And really what Profit First is doing on the business side is using the business bank accounts, in my opinion, to tell the money where to go.
And that is so true. So let's take a step back. You worked for one of the big four accounting firms, which means you're working on top companies in the country, all the big guys. And yet, let me ask you a question. As an accountant, did you ever focus on their profitability?
Very rarely. Most of the work, especially with these publicly traded companies I worked with while at the Big Four, we were looking at the history and what was in the past, making sure that the accounting reports were fairly stated. So we didn't spend a lot of time looking ahead, with the exception of, of course, the publicly traded companies do have some situations where they report forecasting. And the only other thing, which very, very rarely happened with my clients, was, having to look back and just make sure that they were going to be viable for at least another, 12 to 24 months. But we spent very little time looking there. It was all looking at what was going on with the history.
And unfortunately for the small business owner, they're not driving backwards. They want to be going forward. So looking in the rearview mirror at accounting reports doesn't really tell them what to do tomorrow. And being viable is one thing. Being highly profitable and successful is another. And that is where I think the difference of Profit First comes, is that it's helping people to be far more than just viable, which is check to check. It's how do we switch our gears and go to highly profitable, looking forward at what is going on.
I agree. I completely agree, because when I researched the number of small businesses that don't even survive for even a year or two, much less 5 years, the statistics are alarming, and one of the biggest causes of business failure is lack of cash.
And that is true. We have a saying, cash is king, and when you don't have cash, you struggle, and that is a problem. And I think it's one of those things, though, that you've got to forecast forward cash flow, and that's very difficult for a lot of business owners to do unless they have a system and they know how to do it, and that their focus is even on doing that. Most of them, I find, do not have that type of focus as to looking that far forward and understanding what is going to happen. And then the reality is when we don't have cash and we can't pay our bills, we go bankrupt. And the reality is most bankrupt companies have great CPAs, which is wonderful, but they're not there to help you grow and go forward unless you charge them with that. And most of them aren't. Now, you've dealt with all different size companies, from very large to startups to small and growing companies. And I think when we chatted before, you said one of the underlying issues is that they don't have cash. So how do we fix that?
Well, I do think that what the Profit First method helps you with is, from the minute a dollar comes in the door, you are designating 8% of it to go to particular goals, including profit for the owners. And that is the aha that I had when I was listening to Mike Michalowicz on Audible the first time I listened to the book. The aha was that it is taking every dollar coming in and putting it in an account. And of course, one of his terms that I've always loved was this concept of bank balance accounting. And so the ability to designate in an account what you have to spend, with already allocating money for profit owners pay, which another thing I see with small businesses is the owner tends to pay themselves last instead of first, which is another point that the profit first concept addresses, as well as it sets aside money for taxes, which I have been in multiple situations where the owner of the company was shocked that they owed taxes come April, for the year before, and of course didn't have the cash to make those payments easily. And then what basically is left is your operating expense account. It automatically gives you a control over, how much you have to spend.
And it makes it very easy in real time to look forward, unless, of course, you've made a lot of obligations that are coming due in the next 30 days and you haven't been tracking them. And so then you may look at your bank balance and go, well, there's a ton of cash in here, and you forget, well, I just bought inventory 2 weeks ago and I have to pay for it in 2 weeks. And there's payroll due in 2 weeks. And oh yeah, the rent is due in 2 weeks. And all of that adds up very, very quickly. So it gives you a good idea, but you also have to make sure that you're planning for those large expenses that are coming up and being aware of them coming up.
Absolutely. And that's what I have observed over the 20 years of working very closely with, the smaller businesses in particular. The large companies, like the publicly traded companies, you actually have an entire treasury department, and their whole job is making sure there's enough cash. Well, a small company, that usually falls on the owner, or possibly even maybe a bookkeeper or the staff person in the company that does the QuickBooks for them, for example. So what happens is, without good visibility of what those obligations are, you just feel like you're fumbling in the dark, and very reactionary in that, you have to wait for a customer that you just did a big project for to pay your invoice so that you have the cash in the bank to make payroll on Friday. And that's just an awful feeling, that uncertainty and not being sure if you're going to be able to take care of your employees.
And we've talked about this in the past of accounts receivable, being on top of accounts receivable and making the phone call before the bill is due to make sure the customer actually got the bill and that they're happy with your service and that everything is good and that they are ready to pay appropriately. And you've provided all the information. So it's not a surprise day before payroll that, you call them up and they go, oh, I never saw that bill. Sorry.
Right. Right. Well, you've also got to remember, putting on my empathy hat, the owner of that company is possibly in the same boat, that your company is in, and that they are waiting on a big deposit, into their bank account in order to be able to even pay your invoice. So having those conversations sooner rather than later is just a great practice.
And that's so true. And someone's got to do it. And it's a lot easier to make a friendly call than a collections call. So, and if it's not something that you, the owner, want to do, put somebody on your team to do it. And I tell owners that all the time. Like, you don't have to do everything, but someone has to. And you can empower people to do those types of things. But you also need to make sure that they get done. So say, hey, Susie, can you handle this? And then the next day go, how did the call go? Okay, great. And you move on. And that makes sure that it is done, because cash is king and we need to make sure that it's appropriately flowing.
Exactly.
So do you have some stories you can share of some businesses you've worked with and how they've been able to shift the way they do things?
Absolutely. Then our pandemic of this year and going into this upcoming year right here at the new year, the pandemic has certainly given a lot of examples of the two situations where one would be a client who has been on Profit First for a while. It's very interesting in that when they had to close their doors of their studio because you couldn't have contact in the fitness business in most of the states, they knew exactly how many months operating expenses they had and exactly what they needed to keep the doors open. They had a great vision of what their cost of their staff, be it independent contractors working for them or people on payroll. They knew exactly what their cost was because they have been working the profit first method of the allocations, which part of the profit first implementation, is to get a good handle on your cash flowing out. So they had great visibility and knew exactly how long they could sustain without having to lay off staff, which of course gave them the ability to give their staff more notice, because it's a real domino effect when a business has to shut, because it not only affects just the owner's compensation, but also everyone that works for them. And it affects the landlord, the ability to talk to the landlord about pausing the lease payments for those initial months that things were shut down. And so one of my clients just had such peace of mind and was completely in control of their money. And that one, of course, was an upside. And the rest of that particular story is they did look to see how many months they could sustain, and also started working with an attorney to figure out if the pandemic lasted more than 6 months, what were their options to be able to close the business permanently. But of course, you hate to see that coming, but I'd rather be in control of it. A second example is a client who had just implemented Profit First, and part of Profit First strategy naturally builds an emergency fund inside the business accounts. So she was new to the process and had very little set aside for an emergency fund. In fact, she didn't really even have enough to cover even 1/3 of a month's spending. And so when I spoke with her about what her plans were with the shutdown, she was in a panic. I could sense the stress even over the video call of her uncertainty about what steps to take and even where she was. And so that is a contrast to someone who's been on Profit First and had an emergency fund and had good control over where their money was going.
And that is so true. When you have control and you have the ability to do that, it really takes away the fear and the anxiety. And that is a big part of it. And that's what at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is remove the fear and the anxiety, give you total control over your business, and allow you to be able to make changes regardless of what happens in the world. Because we are all going to face storms. COVID is a massive storm that's affecting many people, but we all face individual storms. And so it's so important to do that. I know with all my clients, as we've been going through COVID, like we've sat down and said, okay, in order for you to break even this month because of all your set expenses, this is how much you need in sales. And then every month we look, how much did we have in sales? Good. We were above where we needed for our minimum. So we know that we're going to continue to be viable and that things are going well. And then the second thing we've been doing with COVID is finding out, hey, how do we become more profitable overall? So I've got clients changing the way they buy things. I've got clients changing where they put their focus and which parts of their business they're looking to grow in the sense of, where is the most profitable part of my business? Oh, it's over here. Okay, we're going to put all our efforts and focus on growing this part of the business. And then for all of them, we are looking to build up massive cash reserves. And when I say massive, I'm talking about 6-figure and above cash reserves that will grow over time and that we remove from the company, so that regardless of, if you face that situation where, your business is no longer viable, it's okay, because you've got so much money outside your company doing other things and creating passive income that you're like, hey, this didn't work out. Take 6 months off and think about what I want to do next. And I'm not worried about paying the bills because I already planned for all of that and it's there. And that's the way I built my life. And that's the way I want my clients to live. I want you to be financially so strong and stable that no matter what happens, you're golden.
I couldn't agree more. I think if you even step back, just overall lifestyles, the ability to actually pause, your career, your earning career path, and be able to think about how can I go forward? What do I want to go for you? That kind of financial freedom, not to play off of a word that gets a little bit overused, but that is the beauty of having an excellent cash reserve so that you can take care of things. Personally, we had a situation this summer where one of our really close to us family members was diagnosed with brain cancer and had to have a very invasive brain surgery in July in Florida, and we live in Georgia. And so, I was able to comfortably say I can pause for 6 weeks and focus on helping out with this family member as best we can, while he and his wife and 5-year-old little girl were being so greatly impacted by his health. And so seriously, 5 years ago, Rocky, I would have been a nervous wreck about the cash flow in the business had I not been doing Profit First.
And it's true. It changes lives, right? It gave you the ability to deal with a storm, and you did it with peace, right? You said, I can handle this.
Exactly. I contacted everyone and said, this is the situation and you're in good shape. You were implemented, follow your habit. And I will be checking emails, but just want you to know, our priority is going to be this caretaking situation. And it was great, the grace that my clients had, because they too knew what they were doing with their money, as opposed to being in a panic.
It amazes me how many people are in panic. And these are not new principles. I mean, these are timeless principles. I know because I've been using them for over 35 years, which gives me the ability to live life on my terms. And it's a very different life, which is kind of cool. And
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
So what is something, let's get an actionable takeaway tip that might be able to help business owners today.
Well, going back to my days in the Big Four, as well as some of my Fortune 500 work, I was an internal control specialist, which I, again, not trying to be too accounting ease with jargon, but, internal control is critical, in all size companies. And what I do see, and even saw, in earlier parts of my career, with a small company, even as few as 5 people, it is difficult as you grow to plan where you can have good controls over your money from a standpoint of minimizing the fact that something is going awry, especially in terms of theft or frauds. And keeping good control. And one of the couple of tips in my takeaway is, it doesn't have to be so complicated. And one of my favorite tips is to tell the owners to be sure that all of the bank statements, the credit card statements, and financial reports, like, for example, say you have a small company 401k plan or any kind of investment accounts that might be in the company, get all of those set up to be paper statements. And I'm big on saving the environment, but one statement a month isn't going to hurt anything if it's printed. Have that sent to your home or to your personal P.O. box that no one working in the company has access to. But it's not only do I want you to send those statements every time from the bank, I want you to open them very quickly after they come in, like say over the next weekend. And I want you to look at them and make sure you have a good idea of what every transaction is. Then, just to make sure that the people who are doing your bank deposits or creating your invoices or are sending, buying your purchase orders, your inventories, just to make sure everybody knows you're actually looking at those statements, I want you to go in and ask a question about one of the transactions, whether you already know the answer or not. And just let the staff know, or whomever's helping you, that be an outside bookkeeper, somebody in-house, let them know you're actually looking at these bank statements. And my other tip is don't just focus on the big transactions. Every now and then ask what that $29.95 charge was, just to let them know that you're reviewing and you're connected with the money in the know. I just think that's a great idea. The other little tip, and again, it's an automation one, is all of your banks and credit cards, and even the kind of investment houses that you might have your 401k account at, they can set up alerts just to send you an email of either of transactions over a certain dollar amount. And depending on how big your company is, you may want to just set those up so that as things are happening real time, you're aware of it and can then also ask questions of the people closer to your transactions on your money. So again, so that they know that you are alert and asking questions. Because some of the common things that do happen in a small business would be staff will set up a separate bank account in the company name and be taking deposits and putting some in the regular company account, but then setting up deposits into the fictitious company that you don't even know exist. The other thing that can happen is they will make purchases and might buy a computer for their child and run it through the company without you being aware. But if you have just a couple of alerts, you'll know that the big transactions have happened and you'll wonder what it is. And just being naturally curious about what is this and letting the staff know you're looking, I think goes a long way to prevent things from getting out of hand without you catching it fast.
And those are some great tips. It falls under what I call trust but verify, right? You have to trust your people, but always verify that things are getting done. We've all heard numerous stories of small business owners who somebody in their company was stealing from them, unfortunately, and it caused massive, massive problems. And it's not hard to catch these if you take a couple minutes to just look at things and make sure that they are appropriate. And again, this doesn't take an accounting degree. All you're doing is glancing at, how many transactions are there? Do they look normal to your business? And does everything seem okay? You'll usually see something that's glaring, and that's what you can go ask about.
Yes, because I unfortunately have a client story where the receptionist was doing everything for this small business, including over the course of time, knowing that he hated writing checks and dealing with the bank and the bank statements and the bank reconciliations and QuickBooks. This individual talked him into handling his personal bills and cash also. And so he completely lost visibility, and he was happy to do so because he hated dealing with the money and the numbers. Well, long story made short, he realized that she hadn't been paying his personal bills, the mortgage in particular, when he got a Federal Express package to his home that he was about to be foreclosed on.
Oh, that's horrible.
Which, of course, course, it takes at least 6 months, based on my understanding, before they start FedExing you to tell you we're going to the courthouse now. So that whole situation gave me a lot of time to think, because this was a dear friend of mine that this happened with. And it really did make me start thinking, how can a small business just do a few things to keep that? Because, of course, ultimately, Rocky, he filed bankruptcy.
And that is such a shame. And just a little bit of work every month can prevent these problems from happening.
I agree. And once again, it's being in control of your cash.
And that is the underlying theme. If people would like to learn more about you, find you, and connect, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best way to reach out is you can go to my website, which is www.c as in cat, F as in Frank, O as in officer, -support.com. And you can set up a complimentary consultation with me right from the website. Or just Google Denise W. Grove or CFO-support.com, and you'll be able to reach me. And I would love to talk with anyone about their questions, because like I said, I do want to be a clear source for financial solutions.
And thank you so much for being here and sharing that. And I will put that into the show notes as well. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you, Rocky. It was a pleasure.
Denise shared a great tip to ensure that you have controls in place to ensure there's no fraud in your business. It happens more often than you think. We've all heard the stories. So take the time to verify your numbers and ensure that no one is stealing from you. If you need help, hey, connect with Denise, connect with me, find somebody out there to help you. Let's remember, we don't need more resources. We need to be more resourceful. That's why we focus on the bottom line. If you want help, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer, because you have your zone of genius and want to spend the time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar to schedule a 15-minute good fit call to see if I can support you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Let's thrive and grow. Have a profitable